How are you doing? My name is Frank Martinez, and I am doing a teaching presentation with Eastern New Mexico University, as well as Dr. Vaughn in his senior seminar psychology class on episodic memory. Why do you want to know about memory? Well, it's the fundamental of humanity. It's our identity. It's how we learn. And if we don't know about our memory, or we don't have any memory, we are going to cross boundaries, and some can be very dangerous boundaries. Conversely, the positive to that benefit, we can learn. We can learn about procedures. We can have many recall and retrieve information, as I'm doing right now in the moment, in the present moment. We're doing this, but is it an emotional or is it fact? We'll get to that here in a little bit. We have short-term memory and we have long-term memory. Short-term memory is limited. We have 20 to 30 seconds, learning up to 7 items. Once that comes, it's gonna be gone. It's only a limited capacity. Versus long-term memory. This is unlimited capacity for this. We could bring it up, we could do what we have to do, and it's unlimited. But where is this long-term, short-term memory stored at? Where's it at in our bodies? Nose, our voice, earpods, in our brain. Where at in our brain? Well, somewhere in our brain, it's a key point in our brain that we have that is gonna allow us to transfer this through short term into the long term, which is gonna lead us to, we're gonna get there. Where's it at? Well, we have it in our temporal lobe. And when we have this in our temporal lobe, we also have what is a catalyst to getting that through the short term into our long term, and this being hippocampus. The hippocampus does this, and it allows us to place this memory process short term into our long term. Now, there is no location in our mind. It's in different regions in the cortex. Now let's get to something that we're gonna go into that's gonna lead us to episodic. Now we're staying away from short term because episodic is more of a long-term memory. In our long-term memory, we have two, it's not just one unit. We have two distinct, and one is procedural and the other is declarative. And our procedural is something that, how to do. That's the procedural, how to do something. Now our declarative, this goes into the system that is responsible for the ability to recall information about facts in the world, coupled with many things that we have experienced as an individual. Now, we're not going to go into procedure. We're going to stick with declarative because that's going to lead us to the episodic memory. Now, once we get to our episodic memory, we have something else that is versus compared to episodic memory, and this is semantic memory. Does anybody know what semantic memory is before I go? No, okay. A semantic memory, what we have is the knowledge of something, fact, context free. For example, semantics, when to do this, looking on the syllabus, that's semantics because I wasn't there. It's all facts. I wasn't there. I didn't experience the syllabus being made. You didn't experience the syllabus being made. However, we got the facts from it, context free, and we are recalling it. This is a semantic memory. Now, that could be something we weren't even there. Okay, ultimately we weren't there, but we can recall the facts. Episodic memory, what this presentation is based off, it comes with personal experience. You watching this video right now, this is an episodic experience. It's an episodic memory. Now, because I'm in the context, you're in the context where it's at right now. You're learning this of the episodic memory presentation. This is the episodic memory, and something that's happening right now. Let's go more in detail with a semantic and episodic memory, because in order to understand episodic memory, we're going to want to know about semantic memory. Let's give some examples. A semantic memory, being able to call the likelihood of forgetting something, it's low. For episodic memory, forgetting something is real high. The usefulness of semantic is real high, but our episodic memory is real low for the usefulness. The recollective of experience for the semantic, you don't have to be present to bring up semantic. You brought up the syllabus, you know some stuff on the syllabus. You don't have to be present. You weren't present when it was made. Now, episodic, you have to be present in order to have a recollective experience in that, to recall, to say, hey, I was there in the context with Dr. Bond while he made the syllabus. Sensory component, you don't need to be present in semantic. Does that make sense? We weren't there with Dr. Bond when he made the syllabus. You don't have to be present. That's semantic. No sensories need to go through in order to recall that information. However, for episodic, we do. Your first love. Does that make sense? Fun, romance, episodic. You have to be present. Now, we know about, another example just before I go on the sensory component. We have hearing about other people that were in a relationship. We don't have to be and feel that relationship in order to be there. We don't have to be present, but we heard about it. It makes sense. So that's semantic. One more, the presence of emotions. You don't need to be present to hear about somebody being in love. When they say they're in love, that's semantic. Now, if you're in love, you have to say you were in a romantic relationship, blah, blah, blah. And that is episodic. It all comes down to the episodes. Now, to go deeper into this, ultimately, semantic is with isolated facts. It's no emotions connected at all. But your episodic memory, it's vulnerable to forgetting. And you do have to have emotional connection because it comes with emotional components. Are you seeing why we have to kind of put two and two together to understand, to distinguish more from the other in the long-term memory with semantic and episodic? Okay, now let's go a little further into this, as I mentioned. And what this is going to do is going to go into long-term memory with autobiographical in the episodic. Autobiographical memory. Now, we can recall a memory when we were younger, right? And how did you feel when you were at school with your friends? That's autobiographical memory. Now, do you remember what you learned in school? Or do you remember what you did when you were in a relationship? Those are autobiographical facts. That goes into the semantic. Autobiographical memory is more to the episodic. Does this make sense? Something we learned in history. We weren't there in the history books that they were talking about. We weren't in the context. We're context free. Now, how did you feel when you were learning in class that day when you learned this? That would be your autobiographical memory under episodic memory. Long-term, of course, remember that. Okay, now we're gonna go a little more underneath the episodic long-term memory and autobiographical memory. This is gonna lead us to SelfMemory System. This is the system that helps and tells who we are, what we've done, our life story, things that we have done from growing up, from the first time that we remember growing up, and all of our attitudes and all of our beliefs and what we've seen. Now, this is, in other words, this is a phenomenon that suggests in the self-memory system, the phenomenon that suggests that we produce who we are, we produce our attitudes, we produce the memories. In addition to this, we could also recreate differently in ourselves, particular parts of ourselves, our beliefs, our attitudes, to give us who we are, to make us who we are. Does this make sense? And this came down from the short term, aside from the long term, to your procedural declarative, where we're at, underneath still, and underneath the declarative is semantic and episodic, and underneath the episodic, or alongside episodic, we would have autobiographical memories and autobiographical facts. that was into the semantics, and then with the autobiographical memories, it goes down to the heart of all this, which is the self-memory awareness of who we are. Now, how do we want to recall some of the stuff in our episodic memory? How do you want to recall it? Because as I mentioned earlier, it's a real low for recalling information. What we can do is go back to where we learned it. Think about where we learned this information, if we even have to go back to doing it. This is called context-dependent memory, and this will bring back, help us retrieve more of our episodic memory, which can be used also. We can recall more of our semantic memory. Again, this is a context-dependent memory. This is what you're going to want to do if you want to call that. So if you have they always mentioned, if you learn something in one place, you want to go back and just keep learning, build that routine, build that pattern, go into that context, and you'll get that episodic memory. You'll retain that memory in the long-term memory, in our temporal lobe. And we have many areas in the cortex, though, where the catalyst, as I mentioned, was your hippocampus, and that processes it through short-term into long-term memory, which is in regions of our cortexes. Thank you for watching this. I do appreciate this, and my name is Frank Martinez on episodic memory. Make it a beautiful day.